Welcome back to Building Habits, a series where I speedrun Celeste while following a strict set of rules emphasizing development of fundamentals, starting from a complete beginner level. Previously at level 2, we learned the basic speed tech, the concept of active movement, and the use of 2 jump binds. At level 3, we begin to have a deeper understanding of the mechanics of the game. Mastery of extension timing muscle memory becomes an integral part of our skill set. An introduction to leniency mechanics begins with a focus on buffering and corner correction. Lastly, we aim to normalize our plan, relying on those said leniency mechanics and visual cues to create consistent setups. Habits returns the rules that we have for level 3. First is extension timing. Wave-dash.ppt and what I told you in level 2 weren't actually correct. We're going to require that you know the timing by heart now. By doing the search skip, what you really need to take away from this is the timing, right? Of all the arbitrary timings you can learn in Celeste, this one is the most important one. And this really opens up a lot of doors. We can do extended hypers, we can do extended supers, so on and so forth. So now we don't have to, wait to jump and then doing our wave dash. Now we can just do it from the ground. The other side of the coin of extension timing is the instant timing. So we call these instant hypers or instant supers. So these are really what I was doing a lot of on level 2, but now we're, adding this distinction that we have no dashing motion along the floor that you might see with the extended hyper, right? So it's just the jump is coming out immediately. And as we approach higher levels of habits, we're starting to pay attention to these, increasingly granular levels of detail. This instant hyper or instant super can be pretty useful for normalization because we get the exact same trajectory if we start from the same position. And we'll talk more about normalization. You see it on the rules here. And if you've been following level 2, you should have jump and dash on independent fingers. So you see I have jump on L2 and dash on X. So hitting the 2 in quick succession should not be an issue. Next rule is, I just very vaguely call it leniency. Celeste has a lot of leniency mechanics. The 2 we're going to focus on the most is buffering and corner correction. So buffering just means you're allowed to do your action a little bit early and the game will give it to you by a little bit. And then corner correction is just if you're close enough to a corner, if you dash towards a corner and you're close enough to it, close enough vertically, then the game will sort of push you onto the floor or platform. And then what this lets us do is that we can do some like dash tech, for example, a midair super or demo hyper. These jump throughs are really nice for corner correction. So even when you're down here, so even though this is a 2-tile elevation game, when you do a hyper from down here, I think demo hyper is probably the safest thing to do. And you'll just corner correct on top of here, and that just makes the movement a lot smoother. So these leniency mechanics are just, in summary, the game is being nice, right? You're off by a little bit on your timing or your spacing, but the game will sort of push you in the right direction and let you do what you tried to do. That being said, the iceberg for these leniency mechanics runs pretty deep. So we're going to start slow and we're going to do some of the easier and more obvious ones. So for example, for corner correction, a jump lines up with a 3-tile high platform pretty well. So from here to here lines up pretty well for something like a midair demo hyper. That's one common example. And then for buffering, this can provide some setups to do some otherwise very precise tricks. So for example, you may know here, you line up on this wall here and you can buffer the jump off of that piece of corner right by the spikes. And it's a nice setup, but it only works because of buffering, right? Otherwise it would be very difficult to do. The last rule I have written here is what I've written as normalization. And the goal is to try to do your strats, do your movement the same way every single time. I think the most common application that we'll see of this is the transition buffer. So now we're also bringing in leniency mechanics to make normalization a lot more viable. So the idea of transition buffering is that doing an action on the first possible frame, as we call it, on the first possible moment that the screen finishes scrolling. Right? So this is another one of those arbitrary timings that you got to learn. So you really got to be used to knowing when the screen finishes rolling and then you can start moving again. Right? So one common example is the transition hyper, where you do the down diagonal dash through the screen So you stay grounded. And the moment the screen finishes scrolling, then you do the jump. And not only is that normalized movement, but you will also regain your dash, right? So you don't need space to extend anymore. As long as you get that dash through the screen, you can get a hyper and have your dash back. So this is going to be super useful. Other examples include transition wall bounces and other things. But this sort of idea to normalize your movement and try to repeat these things in the exact same way every single time is going to be an important rule for level 3. One useful way to evaluate your learning of buffering out of transitions is to practice entering a transition and then pause. If you buffer properly, the game will pause before Madeline can move. And if you're late, Madeline will move a little bit and then the pause comes out. Now, whether or not Madeline actually moved might not be obvious at first when you're learning this. So another way to identify this is to enter a transition with blue hair. So for example, dashing upwards through a vertical transition. And then if you buffer the pause properly, Madeline will retain the blue hair. And if you're late at all by a little bit, Madeline's hair will turn to white, or if you're really late, it'll turn red. Hopefully, as you're getting more used to this, you can tell more easily just by seeing if Madeline moved or not before the transition. Or sorry, before the pause. But this hair color method also exists if you're having trouble seeing the motion. If the pause input is too early or you release the button too early, then no pause comes out at all. In runs, we can get instant feedback when we're pausing on some cutscene skips that happen on transition. For example, the one here in 2A. So pay attention when you pause for this cutscene skip. See if you get the pause, the buffered pause, with your favorite indicator, either her moving or her hair color. And really, this is just a convenient wellness check on your grasp of transition buffering. There's another one in 3A, right before you enter the rooftop. So right here, that's one. And then there's also one at the very end of this chapter. Like that. Now, the actual impact on your time on getting these ideal pauses is like nothing, right? If you're late by a few frames, you lose a few frames. If you're early, just pause again, no big deal. But remember that habits is not about the time, it's about the principles of understanding what we should be looking for as we're building our plans, right? In this case, it's proper buffering out of transition, which is going to be one of the most commonly recurring patterns as we move towards higher levels. We really want to make sure we have this timing of the screen rolling locked in. So, don't sweat too much if this is hard at first when you're learning this for the first time, right? If getting this buffer timing doesn't click immediately, just, move on with your life. But recognize that, these little details, for example, even these cutscene skips, these details are something that we want to start paying attention to. Now, at level 3, we are going to open up ourselves to ultras, corner boosts, demos, and neutrals, right? So these are things that the game never actually teaches you how to do. If you ever do these, you probably have looked it up somewhere, probably, or heard from somewhere else. I wouldn't really expect most people to find these on their own. One of the goals of level 3 is we're really going to try to demystify that these are difficult, right? None of these, everything in the game is you're just pressing jump, dash, and grab, right? That's what the game is, and then you're doing these in certain ways or certain places. Now, for example, in Ultra, all an Ultra really is a down diagonal dash, right? If I just stand here and I do a jump and a down diagonal dash, that's in a sense an Ultra. Now, it's not the most useful Ultra. I didn't get a lot of speed from it, but in the same, in all meanings of what an Ultra consists of, it's the same, right? Now, the more useful Ultras are when you already have a lot of speed. So like that, So, oh, it looks really fast, but really you're just pressing the down diagonal dash button. There's nothing crazy about it. So it's really not about how to do an Ultra. You know how to do an Ultra, you just down diagonal dash. It's about when and where, right? And the same applies to the other ones as well. So for example, the corner boost, right? We talk about, oh, I don't know how to corner boost. Well, actually, yes, you do. If you've ever been here and you do that, that's the same buttons that you press for a corner boost. Now, of course, this doesn't look very impressive, right? Because you're not going anywhere, because it's not the right spot to do it. But it's the exact same buttons, right? If I'm here and I'm holding grab and I press my jump button, it's the same inputs as a corner boost. But now that one's not very impressive. So we go here, and that's what a corner boost actually looks like, right? So it's not about how to do a corner boost, it's about when and where to do them and how to set them up, right? The where is sort of like what the setups are, which corners we're going to do them and how to approach them. And the when is, shout out to our leniency mechanics, is the buffer time. That's the new thing that we're going to be learning. Okay, the other thing is neutrals. So these are just jump next to a wall without holding any horizontal directions, and this is another one of those rhythm games where you kind of have to learn, like, release your directions, press jump, and then hold back towards the wall again. The last is this very famous technique called the demo dash or crouch dash. It's an in-game bind, right? So I can go into my controller here, and I have a bind. It's called crouch dash, right? I have a couple binds for it, actually. They do allow some skips. We call these hypers that we start with the demo button, a demo hyper, and this allows us to do hypers that we start from a dash in midair. So that'll be one of the biggest uses of demos. There'll be some other niche things that we will show, but one thing I didn't get to talk about was what we call the hyper b-hop. So remember in level 2 we were talking about like hyper is not very good at forgetting height, but the supers are much better. A common pattern you'll see is that you want to hyper with a short jump so you can return back to the ground as soon as possible and then get a jump or a b-hop off. Right? And basically what this lets you do is if you have enough space, you can get the horizontal speed of a hyper and the vertical speed of like a jump or a super or whatever. So for example, if you go back and watch level 2, what you see what I did is I would just hyper everywhere here, and then I would get stuck on the wall here. What you might do instead is, so around the 4th pillar, you want to do a short hyper and a b-hop, and that should clear, right, this 3-tile block, right? And that's, this hyper b-hop thing is going to be a pretty common pattern. Of course, you need to know when and where you're going to do them, right? Same thing, remember at the start of level 2, we were hypering for no reason. It's the same with everything, right? You don't want to be doing whatever moves for no reason. There's always a rhyme and reason to everything you do. But we're going to just do some runs. Let's just see what happens at this point, I think. Our first little spike jump. There was kind of one in 1A. Not a real one, but... Okay, I haven't figured out how to beat the cycle yet. Alright, coming up, we got a very famous skip here, but... we're gonna do it in a way... like that. And this part I haven't figured out yet either. Just gonna take it slow. Okay, I thought I dashed there, but for some reason nothing came out. Not sure why. Oh my... Okay. No! No! Back to level 2. That's okay. Wait for it. Alright, no problem. See how useful learning level 2 was? I knew exactly what to do on death. Okay. I need to rethink what I'm doing here. Archie. Ah yes, finally we can skip the block here. And this block as well. Alright. This block though, we got something a little new here. Block hyper B-hop. It's a not very commonly seen strat. You can also finally go bottom right here. Oh! I don't even know how to do it anymore. Just skip this block. And that block. Uh-oh. Set up again. I think I'll still take the block here. Oops. No. I know that looks scary, but there's a setup for that, I promise. No. That also looks scary, but again, I promise there's a setup. We got some new things in chapter 5. Wonder what they are. Ooh, too early. Oh. Red dot. Don't forget your habits. Okay, red dot. Now that this looks scary and fast, but I promise you, it's not actually that hard with the level 3 stuff that we've talked about. Again, there's a setup for that. Lots of scary stuff, looking stuff in that chapter, I know, especially in the Theo section, but I promise you, with the rules written I have in level 3, all of that was very doable. Oh. Alright, the big boost coming up. Alright, we learned to beat the cycle. Thanks to our leniency mechanics. Uh-oh. Oh my god. Okay, I didn't trust that. Red dot. We're off cycle, just stick to the red dot. Okay, savable with neutrals. I guess one thing I didn't talk about was dream hypers. I did a few of them in 2A, but we're gonna see more of them here. Like there. And dream double jumps as well. Definitely a lot easier thanks to the demo bind. No speed on my ultras for some reason. A bit of a scam. Give me up. Ah! That's a classic for sure. All right. Still figuring out which strats I want to do. Almost 2.5 minute improvement. Even though I was floundering around a little bit. Not exactly sure what I wanted to do in some rooms. So, okay. I think I'm just gonna take a moment to go through all the rooms that I'm not actually sure what I want to do. Also, I should probably explain a few of the strats that I did. Oh, there was a scary looking strat in this. That is... I promise you this is not scary. You have something called visual cues that we want to look at. So when you're doing this, you want to be vertically aligned, basically, to have with this guy. So once you're vertically aligned with the second pillar, is actually this downright is actually pretty chill. And even that is fine. You do need to extend this hyper a little bit. But if we, now that we're having some familiarity with extension timing at level 3, I think that's fair game to ask. I messed up this room. I was still too early on the cycle. So what I've normally been doing is I'll hyper in the room and then not fast bubble. But somehow I was too early still. Maybe just a regular dash, not a hyper. That should be safe no matter what, right? I haven't quite figured out what I want to do here yet. Sometimes I get this like big speed boost over that corner there. I'm not sure what it's called, but like that. I don't want that to happen. It looks cool, but I don't know what to do once I enter this room. I want to avoid that. Okay, so no upright exiting this room. Just... we can practice our corner correction instead. Or I don't know if practice is the right word, but we can exercise our corner correction. Okay, I know the strat in the next room looked really scary. Looked like it was really fast. But I promise you, I'm gonna take a moment and talk about the strat. There's nothing outside of level 3 in this strat. Okay, the first thing, when you throw Theo, you get a little bit of recoil, just a little bit. But you can use that as our setup, right? And then this is something in level 3 we talk about. When we do strats, there's certain details, that's certain things that make them work, right? It's not you're not doing things for no reason. Right, so when we throw Theo, there's a little bit of recoil. That's actually kind of helpful. And then from here, extended hyper, right? That's level 3. We know how to extend a hyper. I don't want to see the transition hyper in this specific case. Yeah, we're starting to be a little bit more granular in our details. So I want to extend a hyper here. You know, now that we're level 3, we should learn how to buffer things out of transition. So you can hold grab the whole time. You extend a hyper, and then you buffer a dash, right? And you buffer dash, and you buffer jump after you grab Theo. Right? You can do this one step at a time. And then what's going to end up happening is that from the jump from here to this guy right here, that's also 3 tiles, right? Another common pattern, hopefully we can recognize. Now this one's a little bit different because it's going to be when we're on the way down, like we're on the downswing of our jump. So it's a little different, but now this case, very fortunately, has a very nice visual cue. This eyeball right here is where we want to throw Theo and do our mid-air super. So right at the eyeball, you throw Theo and do the mid-air super, and it just works. So back from the top, right? Extended hyper. That's just basic level 3 stuff. We know how to extend a hyper. I would like to see the hyper before you transition. If it's maybe a little tight, you can even take a step back. That might even make things easier, right? Extended hyper and then buffer the down right. Out of transition, you're waiting for that screen to finish rolling, and then that's a very common timing that we need to learn. Right, so there's nothing in, I know, like, this is a thing that you see these strats, maybe they look scary, but there's actually, you know, colloquially we call this like the sauce. Right? There's something that makes them work. So again, so extended hyper, buffer down right, and then you get that down, and then you add one more input, right? Jump. And you do that a few times. Don't worry about what the rest of the room is doing, right? Don't worry about the secret, just get that first part down. Hopefully, if you have speedrun tool, this is a lot easier with speedrun tool. Right? Just get it down piece by piece, right? And this is a lot of what the learning at level 3 is going to be about. You have these like combinations of moves that individually aren't that hard, but you know, you're starting to piece these things together. And that takes practice, right? You have to practice these things to get, you know, used to them and really build them into your muscle memory. Okay, so just do this a few times, and then once that feels comfortable, you can, you know, go for the throw, and then the super right as you pass the eyeball. This guy, that eyeball right at my feet, that's where you want to throw and throw Theo and do your super. Now notice when I do this jump, I'm using this jump button. And I'm holding it the whole time, right? That's a level 2 habit, using both of our jump buttons. And I'm not letting go of it, so I'm getting the full arc. That's normalization of my jump. And then I'm supering with my other jump button. Right? So there's nothing, you know, it looks fast, looks scary, but there's really nothing outside of level 3, right? Now, there are some secret concepts, like why do we need to extend a hyper here when we're getting our dash back in this room? That's just part of the recipe. We can talk more about that on level 4, but for now, just trust that you need to do an extended hyper, right? The last room, or second last room, again, this is sort of another setup that we can do. If you just stand around here, you throw Theo, you do a super, and you jump again, you'll bonk secret every single time. Right? So, but again, your starting position is important here. You need to be like around here, like around the left side of the barrier. If you're in the wrong spot and you try this, it's not going to work. If I'm over here and I try this, it's not going to work. Right? So you need to start from the right spot. So this is where you got to know what your cues are. So start from here. Boom, every single time. Right? Again, level 3 strats, there's something that makes them work. They might look scary, but there's some detail that makes them work, and you got to know what those details are. You know, we're getting to higher levels of habits here. The sort of demands that we're going to make of you are starting to become a little bit higher now. Okay, the famous 3A demo dash. There's many ways to do this, but the setup that I did in the run showcases some core level 3 stuff. So we have extended hyper, and then these two wall kicks are just even easier versions of neutrals. You also want to make sure that you wait a moment between each move to make sure Madeline is completely stopped on the wall. Now, remember, in level 3, we talk about setups and recipes. This is a very specific setup to grab a very specific spot on the wall. Now, in this setup, at no point should you ever hit up or down, right? That would break the setup, and then we're grabbing some random position on the wall. I have no idea. Right, so this position is set up with very specific movement. Now, for the demo itself, it's the same as usual. You do need a short tap to the left just before the demo. Otherwise, you die in the middle of the best bunnies like that. And the demo itself just comes at the peak height of your jump, which is a pretty common timing that we practice in level 3. Now, remember to hold jump the whole time until at least after you demo, which means you're going to want demo and jump on different fingers. We talked about ergonomic binds and level 2 habits, and if you haven't yet, put your demo bind on a different finger than one of your jumps. For example, dash and demo can even share the same finger without much issue.